This time it's the turn of Microsoft 365 groups and the ultimate question: how do they work? Stay tuned and you're going to learn something. Well, I got to tell you, 33,000 subscribers. I cannot thank you enough, guys. I can't believe it, actually. Welcome along to the channel. Andy Malone, Microsoft MVP. So nice to see you here. Hey, especially if this is your first time, I really do appreciate it. This time, I thought I would take a look at Microsoft 365 groups. They are the powerhouse of Microsoft 365 and the important feature behind Microsoft Teams. But exactly how do they work? Well, stick with me. I've got a great demo, so stick around to the end because I guarantee you're going to learn how they work. And I'm not just going to show you half the picture, I'm going to show you the whole thing as well. All right, now, hey, listen, I love subscribers. So if you've not subscribed, bump that subscribe button, ring the bell, and come and join us. We'd love to have you on board, okay? And if you would like the video, then please bump the like button. It really does make a difference to my channel. And questions, comments, hey, we love those as well. Get them down below, and I'll do my very best for you. All right, so let's have a look then at Microsoft 365 groups. I'm going to talk about how to configure them. We'll talk about exactly what they are, how they work, and also how do they integrate into Microsoft Teams. So without any further ado, let's jump into the demos. Enjoy. So I'm kicking off here in the Microsoft 365 Admin Center, and I'm coming down into Teams and Groups. And as you can see, we've got active Teams and Groups, deleted groups, and shared mailboxes. If I come into active Teams, you can see I can now say, hey, do you want to go ahead and create a group? And ultimately, you'll see that we've got 4 different types of groups. And it's really to do with the amount of collaboration that you can do with each of these. Security groups have 0 collaboration and are purely just for assigning permissions. You can either have users or devices as members of security groups. We have mail-enabled security groups. So this is not a mailbox enabled, but just mail-enabled. In other words, it's just a distribution list that happens to be a security group. You can also have a distribution list, so a contact list just for distributing mail. And ultimately, this is the one that we're interested in. This is Microsoft 365 groups. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to create a Microsoft 365 group. So I'm going to call this my London HQ. So let's just call it London HQ. You can put in a little description if you like, and I'll just click on next. Now, a good practice is to assign an owner to the group. An owner is really useful because an owner can invite external users. They can also manage the group as well. So for the purpose of this demo, I've got a user called mod, and I'm going to bring in the mod admin, who's going to be my owner here. And I'm clicking on next. Now, members in groups, there are 2 ways that you can bring in members. You can either add members manually, okay, or you can add them in dynamically by using dynamic rules, or ABAC, attribute-based authentication. For the purpose of this part, I'm going to show you add members. And in here, I'm going to add in a few members. So I'm going to bring in Alex, I'm bringing in Alan, Bianca, who else can we bring in? Brian, and I'll bring in Cameron. All right. So I'm going to bring in those users, and I'm going to click on next. Now, we call this London HQ. So just to say about this particular naming, by the way, you can rename the email address anytime that you want. Now, you can see in here that, first of all, it's saying, hey, do you want to add a Microsoft team to the group? So what does that actually mean? So just before I continue, I'm going to just flip back here and I'm going to open up Outlook. And a common question I get asked is, hey, Andy, who can create groups? Well, actually, by default, any user can create groups. Now, if you're an admin and you want to avoid that, then of course you can control it. So I'm going to come down here into groups, and you can see I've got a group here called US Sales. So one of the first things that you'll notice is we get a shared mailbox, which is awesome, really. We also get a shared document library, so for sharing of group files and so on. We get a shared calendar, a group calendar. We also get a notebook planner and also a Microsoft Teams site as well. Okay, so that's pretty cool, actually. So we get quite a lot for our money. Now, the key thing is you'll notice, however, for this collaboration, it all happens to be Microsoft applications. Now, that's fine. And the other thing is, by the way, if I click into groups and I click onto discover groups, and then if I typed in the word sales and did a search, you can see here there are some groups that are asking me if I want to join. Now, a public group you can join. Anyone can join a public group. So you can see here I've already joined US Sales. All right. Now, the other type of group is called a private group. So if I come back here into my group, and first of all, I'm going to say, do you want to create a team for the group? I'm going to explain what the differences are in a moment. But for now, I'm going to take the checkbox out of that. Don't worry, you can still come back to it if you want to. So you can see by default, it's saying, hey, do you want to create a public group here? Now, what I'm going to do for the purpose of this demo is I'm going to create a private group. And one of the options, or one of the benefits, I should say, of that is that I can allow an admin role. So an admin role might be, okay, anybody in this group would be an Exchange admin, let's say. You'll notice, however, it doesn't work if it's a team. You see that this option's been grayed out. So it's kind of one or the other here. All right. For the purpose of this group, I won't bother with that at the moment. And I'm just going to click on next. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to create my group. So now that I've created my group, I'm just going to refresh the page here. And in here, you can see this is great. I now get an overview of all of my groups, the type of group, whether it's assigned, whether it's private, when it was created, and so on. And you can customize those columns if you want to. Now I'm going to scroll down, and here is my London HQ. And first of all, you'll notice that it's not a Microsoft team. So if I click into here, one of the options that I do have is it says here, would you like to add teams to this group? Now, this is an irreversible action. So if I was to click this, what would happen in Microsoft Teams is it would now extend the group to include features like chat. You get channels, so you can add in different channels into the team. And also, it would extend the UI, the user interface, to include some Teams features. All right, so it's an irreversible action. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to add teams to my group. Am I sure? Yes, I am. Okay, so I'm going to click onto that. And you can now see in a moment that the user interface has now been extended to include Microsoft Teams. All right, now I can go into membership here. And more than that, I can add in additional owners if I want to. I can also add in team members who I want to maybe explore with me. Now, I remember this is a private channel, or it's a private group at the moment. So I can add site visitors if I wanted to. And again, this will take you through to some learning content on learn.microsoft.com, which is really cool, by the way. Now, because this is a Microsoft team, you might want to add more channels in. So I could go in, I could say, hey, I want to create a shared channel or a private channel or a public channel. So I'm going to go in here and type in, let's say, London managers. And I'm going to say, let's click next. Now, you can see that we have two types of channels here. You've got the standard channel and you've got private channels. So only specified team members can have access to that particular channel. Again, you can add specific owners to the channel if you want to. So again, for the purpose of this demo, I'm just adding mod as an owner. And of course, now we can go ahead and finish. Now, because this particular group is a private group, let me just flip back here into Outlook, and I'm going to discover a group. And if I type in London now, oops, just bring that back. So if I type in London and search, you can now see, because it's a private group, you can't join it automatically, but you can request access to it. All right, so difference between private and public groups there. All right, now the other thing that you might want to take a look at is in settings. And in settings, do you want people from outside of the organization to be able to email this team? Absolutely, sounds like a good idea. If you want to send copies of emails to team members, yeah, you might want that. If you want to hide the address from the address book in Outlook, again, you can do that as well. You can also change the privacy level from private and public. And if you're using tools like information protection, you can assign a sensitivity level to this group. So this includes anything, any documents or any communications in here would essentially fall under that sensitivity label. Now, we also have external file sharing, and this is awesome. So it picks up these settings from SharePoint. So you can see that it's picked up my tenant settings from the SharePoint Admin Center, and my tenant settings are actually blocking anyone from anonymous sharing. So for the purpose of this demo, I could say I'm going to allow new and existing guests. Now we have the option of Teams channels. So team owners can add channels and edit the channels. Team owners can edit private channels. So this is the owner settings, the manager settings, if you will. Whereas over here, do you want to allow members to edit their sent messages? Do you want to allow members to delete their messages? So this is almost kind of similar between likes of Facebook and WhatsApp, for example. So like in WhatsApp, you can't edit your messages, where in Facebook you can. All right, so you can change those settings if you want to. So I'm now going to save those settings, and as you can see, they are now all configured for me. So the last thing that I just want to do is just flip over here into Microsoft Teams and just let you see what that looks like. So as I go into Microsoft Teams here, and just let this come in. So if I scroll down, you can see what we've got. If you can see this, here is my London HQ, and I've got my London managers, and you can see that that's a private channel. So I can come in here, I can create a conversation. I can also edit my channel here. I can manage the team exactly the same as I could from within the group. So a team is a group is a team. So I'm often asked, Andy, how do you delete a team? So again, I'm going to come into my 365 admin center here, and I'm going to go into the Teams admin center. If you want to delete a team, I'm just simply coming up to Teams here, and I'm coming into my Manage My Teams, and I'm scrolling right down here. And in here you can see I've got my London HQ team. So what I'm doing is I'm just selected that, and I'm now going to delete this, and I'm going to delete it there. So now you can see my London team has gone. And there is no recycle bin in Teams, which I always found really interesting, by the way. So how do we get that back? Well, you probably guessed it. If I go back into my groups, I'm just refreshing this page. And if I go into deleted groups, sure enough, if I scroll down here, you can now see that my London HQ is here. So I simply select that and I restore. Okay, so now that that's been restored, I can come back into Microsoft Teams if I just refresh the page. And again, if I scroll right down, there it is. You can see my London team. Now you'll notice there's a little red asterisk here. Now what this means is it's just in the process of being restored, and it can take a second or two coming in, but you can see that says London, so it's just refreshing there, and you can now see that my London team is currently being restored. Okay, so if I just deselect that at the moment, you can see that there is a little red asterisk, and all my content from London is now being restored back. So that's a super cool feature. Now, for the final part, I want to come into Azure Active Directory. And again, in Azure Active Directory, you can create groups here as well. So I can create either a new security group or a Microsoft 365 group. So a security group is particularly useful because not only can you assign members, but you can also use dynamic rules as well. And with security groups, this can also include devices. So for example, Microsoft Intune devices and so on. For the purpose of this demo, I'm going to create a Microsoft 365 group. And again, you can see because it's a 365 group, you can only have dynamic users. So I'm going to call this my London IT support. Okay, so this is London IT support. Again, I could add a role to it. I'll not bother here. I'm just going to keep this nice and simple. So now that we're using a dynamic user, what I want to do is, again, I could assign an owner or a manager to the group. And again, I'm just going to use my friend mod here. But when it comes to users, instead of assigning the user, I'm going to actually use what we call a dynamic query. And this is often known as ABAC, or attribute-based authentication. And I'm going to simply add an expression. And you can choose any property from Azure Active Directory. So for the purpose of this demo, I'm going to say if city equals London. Okay, so if city equals London, and I'm going to add an expression, and it can be and or, okay, I'm going to say city equals London, and I'm going to say, let's see, department, and you can do it equals, greater than or equal to, contains. There's lots of different parameters that you can use. I'm going to say IT support. Okay. And you can see I've now got my dynamic rule. And this is where it gets super smart. So I'm going to click on save. I've done my rule, and I'm going to create that group. So how does that work then? Well, super easy. I'm simply going to come back here into 365, into my active users, and I'm going to select a user. So I'm going to scroll down, and I've got a user here called Grady. So here in Grady's account, if I scroll down, you can see he's got his street address here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to delete that, and he's in Bloomington, Illinois. So I'm going to change this, of course, and I'm going to say, actually, no, he's now in London. Okay. So he could have moved job roles, he could have moved location. There's a whole bunch of reasons why he might move. So I'm going to move him to London and just get rid of that. But ultimately, of course, what I also want to do is I want to change his department. So he might have changed his job. And he's now in the IT department. And what happens now, there is a polling process in Azure Active Directory. So Grady is now a member of this particular group, and it's all handled dynamically. So imagine if you were in a school and you've got different years of students. You just simply move the students from year 1 to year 2, and all their settings, all their group settings, where they store their work, everything will be upgraded. It's super smart. Okay. For the final part in this demo, I want to talk about the group settings. So here we've got 3 group settings. And in here, this is ultimately, are you going to allow self-service group management? So owners can manage group ownership requests. Restrict the ability to access group features. Do you want to do that? Security groups, and particularly Microsoft 365 groups. So you saw in Outlook how users can actually create their own groups. Maybe you don't want that. Maybe you just want it to be an admin function. And ultimately, this is very cool, because you can imagine that if you're going to allow users to create their own groups, you might get quite busy with the number of groups there. So this is a clever feature. This is where you can assign an expiry date. So there is an agent which is running AI and machine learning in the background here. I've put in my, again, this is just a demo account here that I'm using. And you can put in an expiry group or expiry date for these Microsoft 365 accounts. So I'm going to come in here and I'm going to say, yeah, okay, for my London, for example, it might be a product, it might be a little bit of a service, it might be a project or something like that. I'm going to say, okay, in 6 months' time, if nobody is using this group, aka team, it could be a team, I want it deleted. So what will happen in 6 months, actually within 30 days before it's due to be deleted, it will detect to see if there is any traffic. If there's any traffic in the group, then don't worry, it won't be deleted. What will happen is the agent will come in, it will say, hey, no, it's still being used, and it will reset the marker for another 6 months. And that's how it works. However, if nobody is using it within 30 days, it will then go to the recycle bin and it will stay there. And of course, you can then go through that recovery process, but particularly useful there. Now, the final thing here is if you want to have a look at the naming policy. So the naming policy is if, you can upload a file here, a CSV file that contains blocked words. So if there's certain names that you don't want to use. Likewise, you can also set up a group naming policy here. So you can add either a prefix, so for example, London sales, London marketing, or you can do a suffix. So again, marketing London, sales London, and so on. So that's a really useful feature. All right, so those are the settings in both Azure Active Directory and groups. Now, I created a dynamic group there, didn't I? So I could still come down here into, just refresh my page. So I'll just refresh my page here. And if I just scroll down and come into my active teams, you can see that, again, I've got my London IT support. Now, London IT support is a dynamic group. Yes, so it's using dynamic membership. But again, check it out. I can make it a team as well. How cool is that? Think about that. So anybody who joins the IT department will now automatically have access to that team. So there you have it. Teams and Microsoft 365 groups. So there you have it, Microsoft 365 groups, aka Microsoft Teams. Isn't that cool? Hey, listen, I really hope you enjoyed that, by the way. And if you did, please bump the like button. It really does help my channel. And if you want to support my channel, please make that red button grey. Go ahead, hit that subscribe button, ring the bell, and you won't miss out on future tutorials, which are all free, by the way. Okay. Thank you so much. I really appreciate you joining me this week, and I will see you next time. You stay safe, and I'll see you soon. Thanks. Hey, thanks so much for dropping by today. Here's a couple of videos that you may enjoy, and while you're here, go ahead, click on the subscribe button and you won't miss out.